There is no improvement in performance on the outside until you improve the picture of yourself on the inside.
You're about to hear a life-changing speech from Brian Tracy. Relax, take notes, and watch this entire video so you don't miss anything that can have a huge impact on your life.
You've heard of self-image psychology that says that we always perform on the outside the way we see ourselves performing on the inside. There is no improvement in performance on the outside until you improve the picture of yourself on the inside. One of our friends, he asked me quickly if I could show him how he could be more effective in karate competitions, and I gave him a three-part way of preparing his mind, which we'll talk about later, which consists of affirmation, visualization, and physical stance. And he said he walked in totally transformed from being nervous and uneasy and unsure in competition. He won 2 silver medals the next competition. He said it was unbelievable. He said it's unbelievable the difference that making a very quick transition in your thinking makes before you go straight into competition. This, by the way, makes a powerful difference just before you go into making a sales call or applying for a job. You can bring about a very fast transition. We'll teach you that method a little bit later. But your self-image is important. All improvement in your outer world begins with an improvement in your self-image. That's why if you want to be thin, they say you have to think thin. What you do is you get pictures of people with fabulous bodies and you take a photograph of yourself and put it over their face and put it on your refrigerator and put it on your main mirror and put it in your briefcase. So every time you see this fabulous body, there's your face staring back at you. And your subconscious mind takes a photograph of it and says, aha, this is what you're supposed to look like. And your appetite starts to diminish and your appetite starts to change and you start to become more interested in healthy foods. So it's really quite amazing. We'll go into this at great depth. Your self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. And this is the most important of all discoveries. One of the great pioneers, by the way, of self-esteem psychology is Nathaniel Branden. Nathaniel Branden has written about it. He's 81 years old. I had lunch with him on Tuesday in Los Angeles. He's not well, but I read all of his materials 30 years ago. And he did some of the pioneering breakthrough work on self-esteem because his conclusion is, and my conclusion even before meeting him, was that your self-esteem is the determinant of your success and happiness in life. It's the most important thing of all. The best definition of self-esteem is how much you like yourself. How much you like yourself. I had a woman come up to me recently. She said, when she heard that from me, she said, she kept trying to say, I like myself. Your self-esteem can be built up by saying, I like myself, I like myself. And she couldn't say it. She said her mother treated her terribly when she was growing up, and she hated herself. She hated herself, she said, and then one day she had a breakthrough, and she said, I don't like myself, I love myself. I love myself. And it was, she said it was like the sun coming up. She felt so happy, and all the old bitterness and resentment just fell away, and she just walked around just feeling happy that she loved herself. So say it. Say, I like myself.
I like myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
Now, wonderfully enough, every time you say, I like myself, your overall self-concept goes up. As your overall self-concept goes up, your ability to perform and your levels of effectiveness in every area of your life go up as well. So the more you like yourself, the better you do in every single area. The more you like yourself, the better a salesperson you are, the better a parent you are, the better a boss you are, the better a friend you are, the better you do any skill, the better you learn, the better your memory is, the more creative, the more ideas you have. And when you have high self-esteem, I call this the reactor core of your nuclear personality. When your reactor core goes off, it explodes and you become the best person you can possibly be, and you are just happy. And the more you like yourself, the more you like other people, and the more they like you back. The more you like yourself, the more you really like others. You see, people will often say, well, what about people who have too much self-esteem? No, there's no such thing. People who are arrogant or pushy or overbearing are not people with high self-esteem. They're people with low self-esteem engaging in compensatory behaviors. People with high self-esteem have basically, they're okay with themselves. And so what they do is they get out of themselves. They're no longer preoccupied with themselves. What are they thinking about me? And, oh my God, did I do the right thing? They're quite happy with themselves, so they're into you. And they're able to focus on you. I don't know if you remember when we were in high school, there were kids who were always really popular. And everybody flocked around them like bees to honey. If you look back over the years, you realize those kids all had high self-esteem. They came from really positive families, and they were just really happy kids. And all the other kids wanted to be around those kids. And they were the presidents of everything and the head of the teams and the heads of the student body. Everybody wanted to promote those people and wanted to be like them. Because when you really like yourself, you like others, and you make others feel good about themselves. And you can achieve this by just saying, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. We used to say, when you get up in the morning, you start saying, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, like pumping yourself up, I like myself. And as you go through the day, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. When I first learned this, I'd say it 10, 20, 50, 100 times a day. My self-esteem was so low, I used to say I was so far behind, I thought I was first. And most of us start off with low self-esteem as a result of mistakes that parents make, and we'll talk about all this. So your self-esteem is the core of your personality. It's the most important thing of all, and the more you say, I like myself, the more your self-esteem goes up. You have a major reversal or disappointment or setback, or somebody's rude or dishonest with you, say, wait a minute, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And when you say, I like myself, because your mind can only hold one thought at a time, the words, I like myself, cancel out all negative thoughts. You can't say, I like myself, and have a negative thought at the same time. So moving on, we say that you were born as pure potential. When a child comes into this world, they are unique and different from any other child that has ever existed. And we say every child comes into the world with a high need for love and touching. For love and touching. When your children are infants, they cry a lot. And one of the reasons that they cry as an infant is not necessarily because their diapers are wet or because they're hungry, is they're trying to find out, am I safe? Am I in a safe world? Am I in a secure world? Am I okay? And when the parent comes and picks them up and hugs them and touches them and talks to them, then they register at a deep level, I'm okay, I'm safe. The job of parents, especially in the first 3 to 5 years, is to build that solid self-concept like concrete so that the child knows that they are good and desirable and attractive and in a safe world. And that they have that, then they have no deficiency needs. My friend Morris Massey said that most adults spend most of their adult life trying to compensate for the deficiencies they experienced in childhood. If they didn't have enough love and touching, they're always seeking out the approval of other people. If they didn't have enough reassurance, they're constantly insecure as adults. Whenever you see an adult that is having problems, you see a problem that took place in the first 3 to 5 years. And almost invariably, it was a lack of love. A lack of sufficient love. A psychologist, a friend of mine, said if you take all of modern psychology, it can be summarized in this, is that all psychological problems stem back to love withheld. Love withheld at the critical formative times. So we say that every child needs love like roses need rain. They need sunshine. They need roses and rain and sunshine. And you cannot give a child too much love in their formative years. You cannot overdo it. There was some schools of thought said, well, you'll make this child dependent or you'll make the child a sissy. Au contraire, the exact opposite happens. When you lavish your children with love when they're young, they grow up strong and self-confident with high self-esteem, positive self-images. They feel terrific about themselves. Lack of love causes all the deficiencies that we see in adult life. The challenge is, if you look at the inner cities, and I just read a study on this, is that many of the mothers with multiple illegitimate children are also drinking and smoking dope, and the kids have no support, no encouragement. They have no nothing, and so they're set up for failure as adults. Another thing that's even worse is that sometimes one or both parents are so busy that they don't have time with the children. Did anybody see the King's Speech, by the way? Do you remember that really interesting part in there where he's asking him about his childhood, and they said he was the nanny. What did he call the nanny? Was a name for her. Anyway, the nanny would take care of them all day long and then bring them and present them to the parents for a short time each day in the evening and then take them away. And they said, and the nanny would always pinch him so he would cry and the parents wouldn't want to have anything to do with him. And so he grew up with this stutter and this tremendous sense of insecurity. Does anybody remember this? If you haven't seen the King's Speech, by the way, it didn't win all the Academy Awards, including Best Picture, by luck. You watched the movie, and you knew that no other movie had a chance. All the other movies were just good box office entertainment. When you watched that movie, you could not believe it. It was so good. And all of his problems with stuttering went back to love withheld in childhood. His father was a bastard. And his father, it even comes out, his father had been extremely aggressive and destructively critical toward him. So his father, the king, was extremely aggressive and critical toward him and berated him continuously. So he just had this terrible stutter. He came to becoming the King of England and almost incapable of speaking. And This King's Speech is, what a great picture. All right. Children are born with two attributes. The first attribute is they are fearless. Children come into the world totally unafraid. In fact, children only have two fears when they're born, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Some parents think it's funny to drop the child, drop the child quickly, and the child screams and goes like this. They think it's funny. You can set up within the child a trauma in early childhood where the child can be afraid of falling, afraid of distances, afraid of spaces, afraid of stairs, afraid of all kinds of things by simply dropping them because they think it's funny. And of course, loud noises. Loud noises shock the child and scare the child. So you want to create an environment where those two don't happen. And this is experienced in the words, I can. I can. The words of fearlessness is I can. I can do anything. They run around, they touch, they taste, they feel, they grab knives, they run out into traffic, they're unafraid of it. They don't know enough to be afraid. Anybody who's ever raised children knows that for the first 10 years of your life, you have to prevent them from killing themselves because they're little suicide bombers. I mean, they just don't understand the danger that exists. We have a swimming pool, and just after we'd had our first child, some friends of ours who also had a child, she was on the phone, talk, left the doors open, the little baby crawled out into the backyard and into the pool and onto the cover on the jacuzzi and crawled into the cover and, of course, fell, and the cover then closed over the child. Talk on the phone, talk on the phone. The child was dead 30 seconds later. And, of course, the family never recovered from it. The husband and wife never recovered. They eventually divorced. It was just a terrible thing because they didn't realize you don't leave children alone. Our children were not alone for 10 years. They were never out of the sight of an adult for the first 10 years because children can kill themselves. There were bars and bolts, and Barbara still has bars and bolts on the door. She doesn't want me to go out. But the thing is that children are unafraid of anything in their formative years because they don't know enough to be afraid. The second attitude that they have, the second attribute they have is they're completely spontaneous. They laugh, they cry, they peep, they poo, they do anything they want. They're completely spontaneous, which is expressed in the attitude, I don't have to. I don't have to do anything. They're completely free spirits when they're children. So the ideal child comes into the world, they are completely fearless and completely spontaneous. And so our natural birthright is to be unafraid and uninhibited. To be unafraid and uninhibited. And we go back to the principle of control. Where do you feel most in control? In the situation where you can be both unafraid and uninhibited. When you're with people that you know and love, who know and love you, so you cannot say the wrong thing, and maybe you've had a little bit of wine or a lot, and you just become completely unafraid and uninhibited, and you're relaxed and you're spontaneous and you laugh and you have a great time. This is your normal birthright. This is what all children are meant to be. And unfortunately, children learn in two ways. The first is they learn by imitation, especially of their parents, of one or both parents. Many children, surprisingly enough, will imitate one parent, and some other children will imitate another parent. We will almost see them as the mirror. Mostly the female children imitate the mother, and the male children imitate the father. But we imitate them. I remember when my children were young, they would do something, and I would say, "You stop that!" And I heard my father, who's British, would say that to me all the time. "You stop that!" with his British accent. And I say, "Oh my God, I'm doing exactly to my children what my father did to me in the same words and for the same provocation." So that's what normally happens, is we naturally spill over and bring our own experience with our parent and we inflict them on our children. And we're not even aware that we're doing it. That woke me up, by the way. I still remember. I thought, oh my God, I do not want to do to my children what was done to me. And I started to really examine my behaviors to make sure that I did not. So they learn by imitation. Now here's an interesting point. The study recently said that children learn if they live in an orderly world by looking at their mother. If their mother seems to be in control and on top of things and calm and in charge, making decisions, they believe, this is an orderly world. If their mother is harassed and nervous and upset and angry and gets upset about little things that happen and so on, they believe that they live in a disorderly world and they are insecure And they have to be like that. So as adults, they will be insecure. I had this woman come up to me and she said, she worries all the time. She worries for ridiculous reasons. I said, your mother was a worrier, wasn't she? She said, how do you know that? I said, like mother, like daughter. If your mother was a worrier, she taught you to worry at her knee. Now, little girl, this is how you worry when you grow up, okay? You take completely absurd things, you catastrophize, you blow them completely out of proportion, and you think about them all the time, okay? And, okay, mommy. And so they grow up, and as adults, they worry all the time. You sound like a genius. How did you know that about my father? How did you know that about your mother? This guy comes up to me and he said, I've never had any confidence. I said, your father was really a bastard, wasn't he? He was always criticized. How did you know that? Well, because if you're a male and you have no confidence, almost invariably, it was your father criticized you all the time. And as a result, you never had any confidence to try anything. How did you know that? Well, because the stuff we're talking about is so important, and yet it's so simple. So we say they learn by moving from discomfort toward comfort. Sigmund Freud's great breakthrough was the pleasure-pain principle, is that people move from pain to pleasure. So they move from discomfort toward comfort. And that is the child's primary motivation. When children are young, they're totally emotional, and they're always moving away from lack of love toward love. They work away from fear and criticism toward love and acceptance. And they're automatic. They're just simply moving all the time from discomfort toward comfort. We as adults, by the way, move from discomfort toward comfort all the time. It is our primary motivation. We are seeking pleasure and moving away from pain. One of the pleasures, the 7 ingredients of success, one of the pleasures is peace of mind, another is financial independence, another is loving relationships. And we always move to compensate for the deficiency that we feel that we are experiencing now. So if we feel that we don't have enough money, that becomes our preoccupation to get enough money. If we don't feel that we have enough love and security in our relationships, that becomes our preoccupation. So very early in life, children begin to develop negative habit patterns which have their roots in destructive criticism. Now, where do these negative habit patterns come from? The first one they come from is destructive criticism. It's used by parents to direct and control their children. Now, destructive criticism happens when the child is told, don't, get away from there, stop that. How many times have I told you, whack, slap, punishment? And the child has no understanding that playing with knives is dangerous. They don't understand what's going on. They only know that if I try something new, Mommy and Daddy get really mad at me and they shout at me and they hit me. So if I try something new, I'm in danger. So I've got to avoid doing anything new. I've got to avoid touching, tasting, feeling things. I can't. And they develop this feeling of I can't. And this feeling of I can't eventually moves, as we say, becomes the inhibitive negative habit pattern. We feel inhibited from trying to do things. We feel inhibited. We feel incompetent, incapable. I'm too small. I can't. And in adult life, this manifests itself. This pattern triggers the response of I can't, which creates the fear of failure. And the fear of failure is the greatest single obstacle to success in adult life. It's not that we cannot do extraordinary things with our lives. It's just that we have such fears, and the fears are irrational. They're not based on anything. They're based on childhood experiences. General MacArthur once said, there is no security in life, there is only opportunity. But unfortunately, the bottom 80% of the population are preoccupied with security. And even into the top 20%, and they think about security all the time, and they're traumatized about taking risks. Here's an interesting discovery about the fear of failure. I can't. And that is that the fear of failure is expressed in the body. And if you take the human body and you turn it sideways, so here's the body, here's the head, okay? And then you divide the human body in half, this way, that is laterally, and you get the front of the body and the back of the body. Well, the fear of failure is manifested on the front of the body. It's manifested first in the solar plexus. Your solar plexus chokes up when you have a fear-induced thought or event. And then it'll dry out your throat. And it'll often cause you to have headaches. And it will often cause your bladder to run, and you have to run and go to the bathroom. Sometimes it'll cause you phlebitis and things. It'll cause you stomach pains. It'll cause your heart to pound faster. And these are all manifestations of the fear of failure. Sometimes I would use an example of this by saying, now, the biggest single fear in America, ahead of the fear of death, is the fear of public speaking. Standing up in front of an audience and speaking. And so in order to help you overcome that fear, now this is an exercise. Beep, this is just an exercise. Beep, this is just an exercise, all right? In order for you to overcome your fear, I'm going to pick one person from this audience, and I'm going to bring you up here to speak later on in the day. And I'm not going to tell you who it is, but you'll be invited up here to speak for 5 minutes later on in the day. So I just want you to think of, if it's you, what you will say in that 5 minutes. Now, how many people felt their solar plexus go just like that? Isn't that interesting? I told you, bleep, this is just an exercise. This is a drill. This is not true. But the very idea of being called up to speak spontaneously in front of a group caused your solar plexus to go. This is a manifestation of the fear of failure. Imagine what happens when you're given a business opportunity or an opportunity for a new job or a new promotion or even setting a new goal and committing yourself to embarking on a new course of action, to paying money to do something that you haven't done before, to learn a new subject. You would choke up all the way here. Pretty soon you can find yourself tossing and turning at night. What if I said I'm going to call you up tomorrow? You don't know who it is, but I'm going to be one of you, and I look at you like this, and I give you a big smile, so you think, oh my God, he's looking right at me. It's going to be me. Do you know what would happen? You'd be tossing and turning all night, thinking, oh my God, what if it's me? What if it's me? Well, you see how irrational it is? I've told you I've told you this is an exercise. It's only a drill, but even the thought of it would cause you probably to be awake at night. So this is where you experience the fear of failure. I just write FOF. I used to write follow up and close when I would say, now the third part of selling is follow up and close. I write FU and close, and I realized it didn't look too good on paper. Anyway, so we say the next habit pattern is the compulsive negative habit pattern. This pattern develops when children receive conditional love. Let us even say when children are the victims of conditional love. This is love that is not given unconditionally. It's given, taken away, given, taken away, given, taken away. Children respond with, I have to please other people. And so instead of saying, I don't have to, I can do anything I want, is children start saying, I have to. If I don't do this, parents say, if you don't, you're going to get it. You better do this or else. If you don't do that, you're in big trouble. And so children who are traumatized about losing the love and security of their parents start thinking, I have to do what mommy and daddy want. I have to do what they want, or they'll get mad at me. They won't love me. I won't be safe. I'll be in great danger. And so what they do is they start saying, I have to. I have to do what mommy says. I have to go now. I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to, I have to, I have to. Children who have been the victims of conditional love grow up with what is called hypersensitivity. And as adults, they are hypersensitive to the opinions of other people. They can't do anything without getting the approval of others. They've got to ask other people. What if somebody disapproves? What if they don't like me? What if they're mad at me? And so they are actually like a deer caught in the headlights. When it comes to anything new or different, they're paralyzed. In selling, for example, the most important quality in selling or in entrepreneurial business is the quality of boldness. It is the quality of actually getting out there, Brett, you know what I'm talking about, and doing it, right? Instead of talking about it and planning for it. And the fear of rejection, the fear of criticism, the fear that other people may disapprove is so traumatizing that it causes people to paralyze and not try anything new or different. So, the compulsive negative habit pattern creates the fear of rejection and also the fear of criticism. This fear of rejection is experienced by adults as type A behavior. Now, there are many people here who have what is characterized as type A behavior. I'll talk about this in greater length tomorrow. But type A behavior is an obsessive desire to earn the approval of the boss. We can never earn enough approval from the boss. I've had people working for me who could have the best year in history, be #1 in the history of the company, and on January 1st, they feel that they're starting all over again. They feel that they have no success, no approval, and they're always scrambling. And what happens with type A behavior is you are trying to perform to what is called an undetermined high standard. In other words, you never know. You can never get there. You can never reach the point where you can relax because you never did get the unconditional love that you needed, and you can never get it from your boss. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. So we say that if you repeat over and over again, I like myself, your self-esteem increases and your fears will diminish. Now, this is one of the great breakthrough thoughts. If you can imagine that everybody has high levels of fears as a result of childhood experiences, and your mind can only hold one thought at a time, imagine your emotions like a teeter-totter is as your self-esteem goes up, your fears go down. And the more you like yourself, the less you fear failure. The more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. The more you like yourself, the more you realize that if you do fail, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you tried something that didn't work out. One of the things we say is, remember, there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And obstacles come not to obstruct, but to instruct. Obstacles come not to obstruct, but to instruct. That's the attitude of the self-actualizing person. And in another attitude of self-actualizing persons is that they are concerned with the thoughts and feelings of others, but not overly concerned. Is they please at least themselves in all things. In other words, they say, you disapprove of me, or you reject me, or criticize me when I call on you. Well, you have a nice day, because it doesn't bother me at all. And they just go on because they know that being rejected is not personal. When people are not supportive of you, it's not personal, it's their problem, it's not your problem. Laura Huxley wrote many years ago a book, and you don't need to read the book, you just need to have the title, and the title was, You Are Not the Target. And what it basically says is you're not the target. If people are hostile towards you, or aggressive, or unsupportive, or negative in business for any reason, it's not personal, it's their problem, it's not your problem. So what you do is you say, well, you have a nice day. And you just let it roll off your back. And the more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. I encourage people when they get up in the morning to say, I like myself, I love my work. I like myself, I love my work, I like myself, I love my work. You can't say it 3 to 5 times without starting to smile. You can't even listen to me say it without smiling inside. It just makes you happy. And of course you teach your kids to say, I like myself, I like myself. And you get them to look in the mirror and say, I like myself. And you tell your kids what wonderful people they are, and they just walk away feeling that the most important people in their life think that they are wonderful people, and they develop positive levels of self-esteem, positive self-image, positive self-concept. They see themselves, and they set really high standards for themselves in terms of realizing their ideal. So it's really important. So the more you say, I like myself, the less you fear. And if you say it over and over again, eventually you drive it down into your subconscious mind until it becomes locked in and permanent. Eventually, you reach the point where you become absolutely fearless. You become absolutely unstoppable. And you do it by pushing down this message, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I love myself, I love myself. And we'll talk more about this later. Now, come to lesson number 4. All right? Before I do that, why don't we just do this one exercise? What one action are you going to take immediately as a result of what you've just learned in this session? Please write down your answer to that question on page 22. What one action are you going to take? Or what one thing are you going to do differently? And you can just write, I'm going to say I like myself 100 times a day. Now, if you're going to say I like myself, I do not suggest that you do it in public washrooms or in crowded elevators. But prior to every sales call, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Prior to every phone call, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And your confidence goes up and your fears drop. And remember, self-esteem is the foundation of self-confidence, and self-confidence is the critical determinant of success in public life. Interesting study recently, self-confidence is also the foundation of sex appeal. Did you know that? A person with high levels of self-confidence is considered to be sexy by members of the opposite sex. For some reason, they're attracted to it for whatever it happens to be. Let me give you an example. We were at the Grammy Awards a couple of months ago in Los Angeles. Incredible experience. And Mick Jagger was singing. Mick Jagger is one of the ugliest people that you can imagine. He looks like he's been beat with an ugly stick, you know, without stopping. And yet he has so much self-confidence that literally women crawl over broken glass and line up around the block to service him. I mean, it's an unbelievable thing. Yeah. No, it's an unbelievable thing because he's got so much self-confidence. It connects with some animal part of our nature. And the higher your level of self-esteem is, the more attractive you are, not only to members of the opposite sex, but the more attractive you are to other people. You know, the President of the United States, Mr. Obama, is called No Drama Obama because he seems to be so confident and completely in charge and in control of himself all the time. And people run to the voting booths and vote for him because he seems to be so confident. Why? And so we're not even going to talk about politics, but the person who has the greatest level of confidence exudes that confidence, and it affects everybody around them. Everybody wants to be working with and for and around people who have self-confidence, and the more you like yourself, the higher is your self-confidence.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
As Emerson said, you become what you think about most of the time. Earl Nightingale, in his Strangest Secret of Success, simply said that you become what you think about all day long. So what we have found is that our outer world is merely a reflection or corresponds with our inner world. In computer language, they have an expression, GIGO, which means garbage in, garbage out. But it also means good in, good out. Now, if the human being was like an animal, and that we were programmed permanently and could never change our instincts and our responses, then we would have no hope. But the good news is that everything that we have learned, we can unlearn. That everything that has been programmed into us can be deprogrammed and can be overridden with new programming. And we say, number one, your self-concept is the master program of your subconscious mind. It's the master program. Your self-concept is your operating system. Everything that you produce on the outside is determined, modified, affected in some way by your self-concept. You cannot change what is being produced on the outside without changing your operating system. So that's the first thing we know. Second, we say you always perform on the outside based on how you think on the inside. You always perform on the outside based on how you think on the inside. Now, there are laws. The law of belief says that your beliefs become your realities. But the things that you believe may not necessarily be true. However, if you believe them intensely enough, they will become true for you. The law of attraction says that you attract into your life people and circumstances in harmony with your own thoughts. And your own thoughts may be positive or negative. They may be uplifting or depressing, but whatever, you'll attract people and circumstances just like them. The law of expectation says that your expectations tend to become your own self-fulfilling prophecies. In other words, what you expect to happen usually does. And if your expectations are based on false information, so you have false expectations, that's what will happen anyway. For instance, your expectations could be that you are destined to have an extraordinary life and be extremely successful. Is that no matter what happens, it's all part of a learning process that is leading you inevitably to great success, happiness, and accomplishment. And if you absolutely expect that to be true, if that's your fundamental belief, then over time that will become true. You'll be able to throw off the ups and downs of life. You'll be able to ignore the negative influences around you. If you confidently expect to be a great success, then by gum, you sure will be. No matter what people tell you, you just say, well, it'll be all right. Everything will work out fine. And we know that an attitude of confident expectation is a hallmark of highly successful people. They just expect to succeed more than they fail. They expect to be liked by others more often than they're disliked. They expect to learn from every difficulty that they have. They expect to keep making progress. They just confidently expect it. And surprise, surprise, your expectations affect your realities. What you experience on the outside is determined by how you think on the inside. As they say, you are not what you think you are, but what you think you are. In the Bible it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, which means in his subconscious mind, way down deep, so is he. According to your faith, it's done unto you, and so on. Well, number 3 is you don't believe what you see what you believe. You see what you have already decided to believe. Irrespective of whether or not that information is based on false information. One of the great rules, by the way, one of the most important of all principles, is to challenge your self-limiting beliefs. You see, we are all plagued by self-limiting beliefs. Beliefs that we tell ourselves, things that we tell ourselves to hold ourselves back. We shoot ourselves in our own feet and then we admire our own marksmanship. We hold ourselves back with self-limiting beliefs. We tell ourselves that we're limited in some way, when in reality, it's probably not true at all. The fact of the matter is that in terms of actual potential, you have so much potential that if you ran at 100 miles an hour, full blast, using your potential for the rest of your life, you would never come within miles of what you're truly capable of doing. In fact, Ernest Holmes, the great metaphysician, once said that all negativity is rooted essentially in the frustration of potential. People feel that they're capable of doing vastly more. Nelson Mandela, in his talk to the Nobel Prize Committee when he received his Nobel Prize, said, "Our great problem is not that we feel that we are powerless, but that deep down inside we feel that we are powerful beyond measure." Powerful beyond measure. That you are powerful beyond measure. It's an incredible thought. It's almost a scary thought, isn't it? But it's also true. Because the powers that you have are extraordinary. And as William James said, we live habitually well within our powers. We have enormous reserves of potential that we habitually fail to use. Which brings us to number 4. All improvement in personal performance begins with an improvement in your self-concept. All improvement in personal performance, in what you do on the outside, begins with an improvement in your self-concept, in your beliefs about yourself. When you change your beliefs about yourself on the inside, you change the reality of your life on the outside. Number 5 is there's a relationship between self-concept and performance. Your self-concept precedes and predicts your levels of performance and effectiveness in everything you do. The self-concept always comes first. It's always as within, so without. It always begins on the inside and radiates outward. I heard that for years. The average person uses only 10% of their potential. The average person uses only 10% of their potential, and so on. And then someone pointed out to me that if that was a true statistic, that means that 90% of your potential is left untapped. Let's take it in its simplest terms. It means that compared to what you could earn, you are earning about 1/10. Or put it in reverse, you could probably earn 10 times what you're earning today. And of course, we know that is true, that you could earn 10 times what you're earning today. And why do we know that's true? Because there's lots of people doing it. Lots of people your age who are doing it. Lots of people started off with nothing who are doing it. Lots of people in your field who are doing it. So obviously it's doable. If there was only one person in America earning 10 times as much as you're earning, then you could say, well, that's a coincidence. But if there's hundreds and thousands and millions of them, well, then maybe we have to say there's something going on here. And whatever anyone else has done, you can do. Whatever anyone else has learned to get from where they were to where they are, you can learn as well. But of course, the statistics, according to Stanford, are a little bit worse than 10%. The average person, according to Stanford, uses only about 2% of their potential. The average person has got a lot of potential, but they're saving it up for a good purpose, yet to be determined. We also know there's a direct relationship between the amount of your potential you use and your self-concept. And since the average person, let's use 10% as a generous estimate, since the average person's self-concept is far more limited than it needs to be, then your level of effectiveness is limited as well. We also know something else. We know that your self-concept is subjective. In other words, what you think and feel and believe about yourself is not based on reality. It's not based on fact. It's based on information that you have taken in and accepted as real, and as a result, it has become true for you. Most of our self-limiting beliefs have no basis whatever in reality. If you ask an adult, can you play a violin? He'll say, no, I don't play a violin. If you ask a child, the child will say, I don't know, I haven't tried yet. The adult is very, very quick to shoot themselves in the foot. The adult is wide open. The child, like the teacher goes up to little Bobby and says, Bobby, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm drawing a picture of God. She said, you can't do that. Nobody knows what God looks like. Yeah? Well, they will when I'm done. In other words, young people don't have all the blocks. We say we're old and mature now. You know what old and older and more mature and wise means? It means we've sold ourselves out. We've settled for less. We've put our dreams in the closet, as they say. We've accepted that we're limited, and whenever possible, we'll encourage as many other people to think the same way too. So we know that your self-concept controls your performance, and your self-concept is subjective. Think about that. You think that you're not good in some particular area of life? You think that your income is limited? It's subjective. Now let me explain to you what I mean. We each have a series of mini self-concepts. You have a self-concept for how you dress, and you have a self-concept for how you play a musical instrument, and a self-concept for how well you tell jokes and speak in public, and a self-concept for how punctual you are, and how well you use your time, and how much you read, and whether or not you listen to audio programs in your car. You have a self-concept for how smart you are, how creative, how quickly you learn, what kind of a memory you have. You have a self-concept for how likable and personable you are with others. If you're a salesperson, you have a self-concept or a mini self-concept for each of the different parts of selling. For instance, for telephone skills, prospecting, approaching, questioning, presenting, answering objections, closing, and so on. You have a whole series of tiny little self-concepts that put all together combine to give you your overall self-concept as how you are as a salesperson. You have a self-concept for what kind of a parent you are, what kind of a child you are to your parents, what kind of a husband or wife, what kind of a lover you are, what kind of a drinker you are, how much you drink, how much you weigh. You have a self-concept for your manners. You have a self-concept for every part of your life that you consider important. By the way, men have a self-concept for driving. All men are excellent drivers in their self-concept. This, by the way, ladies, is a genetic thing. We have an extra chromosome that has not yet been discovered for excellent driving. You can tell, by the way, when your self-concept is challenged, your inner beliefs about yourself, is because you instantly react negatively. You're just like your mother. You're never on time. If it's a clash with what you believe yourself to be, you react defensively and angrily. It's just natural. You have what are called triggers that a person can just push and get you going. So gentlemen always have the ability to drive well. And any lady who has ever corrected a man's driving knows that we do not respond too well to it. Women, by the way, have a self-concept for manners. Women are absolutely wonderful about manners. It is women that actually hold society together because they are so cognizant of the correct ways to do things. And even if a woman is wearing rags and covered with dirt and throwing dishes and screaming, if you ever accuse her of having had poor manners, she will never forget. Now, here's the point that turned my life around many years ago with regard to self-concept. I couldn't believe this. I stood there staggered. I still remember the time and the place I learned it many years ago, is that each of us has a self-concept with regard to the amount of money that we make. And that you can never earn more than 10% above or below your self-concept level of income without engaging in compensatory behaviors. Your self-concept is like a thermostat, and it has what is called a comfort zone. And your self-concept level of income is your comfort zone. And you strive to get into the comfort zone, and that we know two things about the human psyche. We strive to get into a comfort zone and then stay there, and we will resist any change that moves us out of our comfort zone, even positive change. Second of all, if we're moved out of our comfort zone involuntarily for any period of time, we'll struggle to get back into it and rebuild it immediately. Has anybody ever gone on a 2 or 3 week vacation somewhere? You know, you go away, you rent a condominium. Very first thing you do is you go down to the store and buy all the same foods you left back at home. Sometimes you take your own coffee cup, and from our kids, we take their toys, their blanket, and their pillow. In other words, we move and we recreate a new comfort zone. So, we know that the amount of money that you earn today has nothing to do with what you're capable of earning. It has only to do with where your comfort zone is today. If you earn 10% more or above your self-concept level of income, you'll immediately engage in what are called compensatory behaviors, throwaway behaviors. You'll do everything possible to get rid of the money. That's why, by the way, you often hear about drug dealers. They'll leave a briefcase full of money in a taxi cab. They'll actually lose it on the street. It's because deep down inside, this money is so far beyond their self-concept that they just lose the money. They just forget it. Well, if you go 10% or more below your self-concept level of income, you engage in scrambling behaviors. You work longer hours, you work harder, you take additional training, you get interested in other jobs and second income opportunities. But once you get into your comfort zone, you stay there. As it happens, your comfort zone is about 40% below the amount that you actually need right now to be comfortable. This is a basic study. People have said, how much you earn today, how much would it take for you to be comfortable? They say basically about 40% more on average. Then I'd be comfortable, but then that would become your new comfort zone. And if they ask you the question a year from now, what would it be? 40% more. No matter how much you earn, you just simply adjust your comfort zone. When I learned this, I realized that if I could raise my thermostat, my financial thermostat, I could increase my income. And that was the turning point. It enabled me to increase my income 10 times in the next 5 years, and 10 times in the next 5 years. And I've shared these ideas that we're talking about here today with lots of people, and they've done the same thing. Absolutely phenomenal. The critical thing was that no matter how hard you work on the outside, nothing will change if you don't change your comfort zone, your self-concept on the inside, which is what we will talk about doing, and we are talking about doing throughout this course. So, we know that your self-concept is made up of 3 parts. The first part, A, is your self-ideal. Your self-ideal is composed of your goals, your values, your aspirations, the qualities that you admire in yourself and others, your hopes, your dreams, and your visions. Now here's an important point. This is your ideal. This is the person you would ideally like to be at some point in the future. Your ideal exerts an enormous influence on the direction that you go in life, on what you do in the present to assure that you arrive there in the future. What we know is this, and I could spend an entire day on this, but we know that the critical word in here is clarity. Successful people are very clear about who they are and where they're going and what they want to go and what to do and what they want to accomplish. They're very clear. And as a result, this acts almost like a magnet, and it pulls them forward in the direction of making their ideal into their real. So the greater clarity you have about who you are and what you would ideally like to be and have and do sometime in the future, the more likely it is that you will move rapidly toward your goals, and your goals will move more rapidly toward you. What do we know about unsuccessful people? Is that they're very fuzzy about their ideals. In most cases, they have no ideals at all. They compromise whatever qualities they may espouse. They have no visions or goals. And if something else comes along, they go that direction or that direction. Successful people are crystal clear, and they move in a straight line toward being the very best person they can imagine being, and toward achieving the very best things that they can imagine achieving. So your self-ideal is very important. The second is your self-image. Your self-image is the way you see yourself and the way you think about yourself. It's often called your inner mirror. It determines how you perform on the outside. It's like you look into this mirror before you perform. If you see yourself as an outstanding sales professional, calm, confident, relaxed, positive, highly paid, then when you work and interact with clients, that's how you'll be. If you see yourself new and inexperienced and not knowing enough about your product, then that will come across. But it is what is going on the inside. And we know with self-image modification, if you change your mental pictures, about yourself, if you begin to visualize and imagine yourself as you would like to be, that mental picture is accepted by your subconscious mind as a blueprint or a command, and you act on the outside consistent with the mental picture. Here's a key point. If you have something important coming up, every time you think of it, visualize and imagine yourself calm, confident, relaxed, and the whole situation coming out perfectly. Before you go to bed at night, before an important day, the last thing you think about is you visualize and feed your mind with a picture of yourself performing at your very best. Then your subconscious mind takes that picture into the laboratory and works on it all night long. The next morning, next day, when you get out and you go into that situation, you'll find that you function beautifully. All top athletes, all Olympic athletes use these techniques all the time to train themselves, continually visualizing themselves at high levels of performance. Very important. C is your self-esteem. Now, your self-esteem is really the core of everything. Your self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. Your self-esteem is the reactor core of your personality. It's what determines your level of energy. It determines what kind of a person you are. People with high self-esteem are likable and personable. They get along well with other people. They feel good about themselves. They're seldom sick. They have high levels of energy. People with high self-esteem are the most desired and desirable people in our society. The two characteristics of high performance in selling are high self-esteem and high self-responsibility. And each one feeds the other. A person who has high self-esteem accepts responsibility for their life. And a person who accepts a high level of responsibility has high self-esteem. And the very best definition of self-esteem is how much you like yourself. How much you like yourself. How much you like yourself as a parent. How much you like yourself as a sales professional. How much you like yourself as a spouse. How much you like yourself as a man or a woman. How much you like yourself in terms of physical fitness and health. How much you like yourself in terms of your income or your ability to speak or tell jokes or get along well with others. How much you like yourself. And we know that your overall self-concept is an average of your self-concept in all the areas of your life that you consider important. We also know that since you become what you think about, if you say the words, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. If you say, I like myself, your overall self-concept goes up. When your overall self-concept goes up, your levels of performance and effectiveness in each area of your life go up as well. The more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, the better you do. The better you do, the more you like yourself. The more you like yourself, the better you do. The flip side of self-esteem is self-mastery, self-efficacy. The more you do, the better you like yourself. The better you like yourself, the more you do. And by saying, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, you actually build your self-concept up and you do better at everything you attempt. Try it. Say, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. Now, when I first learned this, I said, it can't be that simple. And yet I started saying this 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 times a day. I like myself. 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 Like an engine. I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. I know I can. I like myself. I like myself. Now, here's an interesting point. When you first say, I like myself, you may not like yourself. When you first say, I like myself, sometimes you'll feel a little bit funny inside. This was my experience. And then I studied it in psychology, and I find that if you have old garbage stored in your subconscious mind, which says that you don't like yourself, or which is critical or skeptical of yourself, when the new message comes in, it creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, or two cymbals clashing. The new old symbol and the new symbol, clang. And the clang is a feeling of discomfort. Whenever you say something to yourself that is inconsistent with old garbage, you feel uncomfortable and a little bit like an imposter, like a fraud, like it's not right. However, the words I like myself are perfectly good and perfectly true. And the more you like yourself, the better you do. And if you keep saying, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, you drive it deeper and deeper into your subconscious mind, and you like yourself more and more and more. And eventually it overrides all the old negative messages. Remember, your subconscious mind does not think. It merely responds to your commands. Your subconscious mind is extraordinarily powerful, and its job is to keep you consistent on the outside with your commands on the inside. So if you say over and over again, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, it'll change your body language. Your subconscious mind will correct your body language and your tone of voice and your handshake. It will change your actions and reactions. You'll like yourself more, and when you like yourself more, you like other people more. And when you like other people more, they like you more. And so your life gets better and better. And everything that we do has to be aimed at increasing the amount at which we like ourselves. Why is it that we strive to be excellent in our fields? Because you can never be happy and you can never have high self-esteem if you feel inferior in your field. The absence of a commitment to excellence is an acceptance of mediocrity. When you become one of the top 10% in your field, you really like yourself. You feel good about yourself. People respect and esteem you and look up to you, and they ask for your advice. And your bosses respect and esteem you and want to take you out for lunch. And your customers like you and want to buy from you and recommend you to others. And you live in a beautiful home and you drive a nice car and you feel wonderful about yourself as a person. So the reason we strive for excellence is because excellence reinforces and supports our self-esteem. You can't have self-esteem all by itself floating in the air. You can't have high self-esteem detached from reality. You can't be a jerk and a failure and have high self-esteem. So what you do is you constantly, when you have goals, you have higher self-esteem. Because only people who have high self-esteem set high goals for themselves. So the very act of setting high goals creates what is called the reversibility effect. Is if people with high self-esteem set goals, and you want to have high self-esteem, you set goals, and it causes you to have high self-esteem. If people have high self-esteem, get along really well with others, then concentrate on getting along really well with others, and surprise, surprise, they will treat you well, and your self-esteem will go up. Everything is back and forth, windshield wiper. And your whole life must become a constant process of upgrading your self-esteem in every area of life that's important to you, and you will accomplish extraordinary things. And it starts by saying, I like myself. So number 7, the most powerful words in self-concept reinforcement are the words, I like myself. I like myself. If you tell your children, I love you, you're the most wonderful children in the world. If you tell your spouse that he or she is the most wonderful person in the world, they like themselves more. They like themselves more, they like you more. If they like you more, you like them more. You can actually dramatically enhance the quality of your relationships with the people around you by saying things to them that cause them to like and respect themselves even more. Because everything that you do that causes another person to feel better about themselves causes you to feel better about yourself. We are constructed by nature in the most remarkable way, is you cannot uplift another person without it simultaneously uplifting yourself. The flip side is also true. We cannot do something negative or say something negative about another person without tearing down ourselves as well. Shakespeare once wrote that the fragrance of the rose lingers on the hand that casts it. The fragrance of anything that you cast lingers on your hand. Number 8, there are 2 major obstacles to high performance. The first, A, is the fear of failure. The fear of failure is learned in early childhood when children are told over and over again, no, stop, don't, get away from there, stop touching that. Children hear the first word they hear over and over again is no, stop, no. Children are driven by instinct to touch and taste and smell and feel and get into everything. They're little kamikaze pilots. They have no sense of danger. Nothing. And parents are always trying to protect them by saying, no, stop that, get away from there, leave that alone, put that down, now look what you've done. Children eventually, if they are verbally, emotionally, and physically disabused, begin to develop the feeling, I can't. I'm too small. Every time I try something, Mommy gets mad at me. They get angry with me. They shout at me. I can't. I can't. I can't. And as adults, whenever we're presented with a new opportunity, a new possibility, a book, a tape, a course, a job, a promotion, the first thing, I can't. I can't. Come up here and speak to the group. Oh, God, I can't. I can't. I can't. Just stand up and tell us how you got to where you are in your life. Oh, 54% of adults would rather die than speak in public. I can't. So whenever you're confronted with an opportunity to do something different, your natural response, which is taking you out of your comfort zone, I can't. We always feel this fear of failure in our solar plexus. It starts in the front of our body, and our solar plexus moves up through our stomach to our heart, our lungs, our throat. Can even give us headaches. Can cause our bladder to go loose and cause us to have to run and go to the bathroom. This fear of failure is terrible. And the way that you countermand the fear of failure, whenever you think of something that is fearful, you say the words which override these words. The words are, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Tell your kids you can do it. Tell your spouse you can do it. Tell your friends you can do it. Tell people who are looking at a new challenge, you can do it. Start a business, you can do it. Call on a big customer, you can do it. just tell people you can do it, because every single time you reinforce somebody else, you reinforce your own courage. What is the word encourage? It is to instill courage into. When you encourage other people, you actually encourage yourself. And remember, fear is the big enemy. Our job is to get rid of this fear of failure. This fear of failure that holds us back and paralyzes us. Imagine if you weren't afraid of anything in the whole world. What a difference it would make. Imagine if you were guaranteed of success in anything. If somebody waved a magic wand and said, whatever you do from now on, you'll be successful. And you went out here and you could do anything, call on anybody, go anywhere, start anything, try anything, and you'd be successful. We don't realize how much of a role fear plays in our life until we think what we would do if we didn't have any. And B is the fear of rejection. Fear of rejection is the second big fear, and it's learned when children are told, you'd better or else. If you don't, you're going to be in big trouble. Now you're in trouble, and parents withdraw their love and affection from the child and express disapproval and anger for what the child does. And the child wants to get along and wants to be loved and needs love more than anything else. So children learn at a very early age, if you want to get along, you better go along. So they eventually stop doing what their parents disapprove of, and they start saying, I have to do what mommy wants. I have to do what daddy wants. I have to do what they approve of, or they won't love me. And then we become adults, and this goes unconscious, and it's programmed into our subconscious mind, and many adults become hypersensitive. They're hypersensitive to the opinions of others. They're hypersensitive to the criticism of others. I have to do this. I have to do that. If I don't do this, he won't like me, she won't like me, they won't like me, they'll disapprove of me. So therefore, we become hypersensitive. We have this fear of rejection, which is a fear of criticism. It's a fear of ridicule. It's a fear of disapproval. And we find that all successful people have to overcome these fears of failure and these fears of criticism, these fears of disapproval, in order to move ahead in their lives. So what is the counter to the words I have to? It is, I don't have to. I don't have to. I can do anything I want to do, and I don't have to do anything I don't have to do. One of the most important things we do in life is we begin to define ourselves in our own terms. What this means very simply is this, is you do what you do because you want to do it and because it's consistent with what you think is the best in your own life. And you don't do it or not do it because you're afraid of what others might think. Because what others might think is really quite irrelevant, because it changes all the time anyway, and you cannot organize your life on it. I read Cyrano de Bergerac, the play by Edmond Rostand, some years ago. Cyrano is an extraordinarily individualistic, self-confident, outspoken man. Just a great, interesting man. Later on in the book, they ask him, they say, Cyrano, or in the play, Cyrano, why is it that you have always been so individualistic? You always have gone your own way. You've always been indifferent to the opinions of others. He said, as a young man, I thought about this a lot, and I realized that the opinions of others were inconstant and constantly changing. So I resolved to follow the law of least resistance in this, that I would please at least myself in all things. And you know something? This is the height of rationality. Because everybody else's opinion comes and goes and changes and is inconstant as the wind and the weather. Please at least yourself. If you have to doubt, you say, what do I want to do? What do me, really want to do? And don't sacrifice your life because of what you think that others may think. Because the fact of the matter is, if you knew how little others really thought about you, you'd be insulted. Don't ever sacrifice your life because of your concern with what you think others may think. Many people stay in bad relationships and bad jobs because why? Because they're afraid that others will be really upset if they leave. And when it finally reaches the point where they can't stand it anymore and they leave, and they turn and say, well, I've left that job or that relationship. And that person says, yeah, I wonder why you stayed there for so long. It's been obvious to everybody for years it wasn't working out. And you thought you would put on a great show, that you would really impress people, that nobody knew about this. Everybody knows. Here's the second rule. Remember I said people don't change? Rule number 2. Everybody knows everything. If you believe that other people don't know everything, then you probably need some counseling. Everybody knows everything. And if they don't know, somebody will tell them very soon. So those are the things. I like myself. And here's the most wonderful thing, is that the more you like yourself, there's a direct relationship, a reverse relationship between self-esteem on the one escalator and your fears of failure and rejection on the other. Is the more you like yourself, the less you fear failure. The more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. The more you like yourself, the less fears you have. So when you say, I like myself, and I can do it, and I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, when you talk to yourself in a positive way, you think, feel, and act in a positive and constructive way. 95% of your emotions at any moment are determined by how you talk to yourself. If you talk to yourself in a positive, constructive, dynamic way, I like myself, I'm the best, I love my work, I can do anything I put my mind to do. If you talk to yourself like that, then your self-esteem gets higher and higher and your fears get lower and lower. It's not your fears will go away, but when you do have little fears, you confront them, you counterattack them, you charge at them with, first of all, taking charge of your mind and then doing what it is you fear until the fear is gone. Right? All right. This is the key to high success. Number 9, there are 2 major traps based on fear. The first major trap, A, is called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a major mental illness that preoccupies 80% or more of Americans. We feel helpless. We can't change. We can't lose the weight. We can't increase our income. We can't get on top of our bills. We can't achieve financial independence. We can't sell more, earn more, do more, have more. We can't. I can't. And we just become so preoccupied with it, then we fall in love with our excuses. Richard Bach once wrote in one of his books, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. And most of us take the brief against ourselves and argue against ourselves in court. We prosecute ourselves and tell ourselves all the reasons why we can't do it, why we're helpless. But the fact is that you are not helpless, you are powerful beyond measure. Isn't that true? Say yes. And if you believe it to be true, it becomes true for you. B is the comfort zone. The comfort zone is the most dangerous of all. The comfort zone is what we slip into, and some people slip into a comfort zone when they're very young. In fact, there's been some interesting work done in the last few years on age. You know, sometimes people say, close your eyes, and here's a question. How old would you think you were if you didn't know how old you were? And you know something? Your mind is largely ageless. Your body ages, but not your mind. If you were divorced from your body, you wouldn't know how old you were. That's why people who have amnesia have no idea how old they were or anything. And sometimes a person who's 39 will think they're 29, so they act 29. So, your comfort zone is very important. So they say, how old are you? Do you know how old you are? You are as old as your dreams. You're as old as your hopes and your flexibility. You're as old as your goals. And there are people who are 65 years old and they're dynamic and they're exciting and they're trying new things and they're learning to operate computers and they're taking up skiing and skydiving and scuba diving. And there are people who are 25 who are old because they've gotten into a comfort zone, and then what they do is they protect and defend and backpedal and shovel and so on. So, what is your comfort zone? And whatever it is, get yourself out of the comfort zone with bigger goals. And we'll talk about this. Bigger goals, bigger dreams, bigger visions. And whenever you see somebody else who's doing something well, you just say, why not me? I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. So finally, number 10, your goal is to become unstoppable. And since you become what you think about most of the time, how do you become unstoppable? What you do is you say, I am unstoppable. And whenever you feel like stopping, you catch yourself and you repeat, I am unstoppable. Say it, I am unstoppable. And whenever you run into any difficulty of any kind at all, you just simply stop and say, wait a minute. I'm unstoppable. I cannot be stopped. If you want to stop me, you'd better bring a .357 Magnum and get the first shot in the first time, or I'll be all over you like fleas on a hound dog. I am unstoppable. I studied this for 30 years, and I've concluded that everything that we learn about the development of character and personality comes to a peak at being unstoppable. Being the kind of person that launches and refuses to stop until you darn well achieve what you want to achieve, right? Be unstoppable. And the more you like yourself, the more you persist. The more you like yourself, the less likely you are to stop. And you know what we have found is that people who don't stop eventually succeed greatly. And the number one reason for underachievement is people stop. Is that there's no limit on what you can accomplish if you're absolutely crystal clear about where you're going and you're crystal clear about who you are on the inside and you like yourself and you don't stop. But here's the most incredible thing. It takes tremendous self-discipline to do these things because every single force in our psyche pulls us back. And every time you persist, every time you use your discipline to persist, you increase your self-discipline. And every time you increase your self-discipline, you increase your propensity to persist. And every act of self-discipline and persistence raises your self-esteem because you like and respect yourself more because you know you're the kind of person who didn't quit when others did. And when you like yourself more, it gives you greater discipline and greater propensity to persist. So all of these qualities, which are acts, behaviors that you do as a conscious result of willpower, you decide, by gum, that's what I want. By gum, this is who I am. By gum, that's where I'm going. And when you refuse to quit, you like yourself more and more, which makes it less and less likely that you'll ever quit. And you'll finally reach the point where people will say, well, she will never quit. If she says she's going to do it, she's going to do it. You can take that to the bank. He will never quit. He's not the kind of person that quits. Once he says he's going to do something, one thing I know about him is he will never, never stop. When you get that kind of a reputation, not only is your great success materially guaranteed, but your happiness and your respect and esteem in life and with the people around you is guaranteed as well. You become one of the finest people in our society, and you did it because you made yourself. You sculpted yourself. You crafted your own personality. It wasn't done to you or for you or with you. You did it yourself, which causes you to like yourself more, which makes you persist even more, which raises your self-discipline, which makes you more likable and more personable person, and which makes you more successful in everything you do.